Three, two, one. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Here to Spear, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We are here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening. It feels good to be back after a nice week. We've had a pretty up and down one, not too crazy busy this week. We've got a couple topics to go over, including some recruiting. We've got some commitments coming up that we are going to cover. Dustin's got us some good inside scoop on a couple of them that are going to be going down this upcoming weekend, including one that's going to happen on Friday. So we're going to go jump into some recruiting here in just a few. We're going to talk Luke Kromenhoek jumping up in some recruiting rankings, Florida State's 2024 blue chip quarterback commit. We're going to talk Jared Verse, Trey Benson, and Jordan Travis being listed on some of these 2024 early NFL draft class projections. And then we're going to talk some Rodney Hudson getting inducted into the FSU Athletics Hall of Fame. And then we're going to end it off with some basketball and some indefinite suspension stuff. VZ, I don't know what you got going on over there in Leonard Hamilton's program, but one of Florida State basketball's top basketball players right now being suspended. But before we get started, let me introduce the guys with me this evening. Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief at NoleGameday.com with me. Also is down below Austin VZ, our lead basketball writer. Gentlemen, how are we doing on this wonderful Wednesday? A little hot up there in Charlotte, isn't it, VZ?
96 degrees. It's like I never left Florida.
Tell you what, this Amazon Prime week killing me.
the credit card charge is going up.
Is it you or your wife?
Get a new credit card after today.
Is it you or your wife doing this?
It's a mixture. I would say I'm
Any good
pretty
steals you
involved in the efforts. Looking at a Ring doorbell.
Okay, for safety reasons.
Yeah.
Are you?
I just don't like answering the door. I'd rather be on the couch and be like, "What do you want? Get off my property."
Sounds about right.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me one bit whatsoever. Have y'all checked out the new social media platform, Threads? Have y'all been on there yet? I know, Dustin, you did get on there after swearing you wouldn't last week.
Well, when you get spammed by you 50 times, you got to just accept it and do it.
I've held off so far. I haven't caved in yet.
Yeah. I don't think there shouldn't be any rush for anybody. Not yet, although they did have over 100 million users join. But I think that's heavily because of Instagram connects immediately to Threads for you. So makes it fairly easy to make an account, which is a smart move by Zuckerberg. And
also you can't delete your Threads account unless you delete your Instagram account. So they have effectively forced you to keep your Threads account now.
Yeah, definitely heavy in beta mode, it felt like. But for sure, Zuckerberg made sure to rush this out and get this out quickly as possible, as now we have a Zuck versus Elon battle fight maybe potentially going on. I don't know. We've been covering it over there on our MMA knockout site. So I don't know what's happening, but I don't know. It feels like the old Twitter back in the day where you just kind of just tweet things and you're not really pushing stuff for business. I see some other accounts pushing stuff for getting their articles out and whatnot, but I think it should just be screw posting articles or all these other different things. Let's just tweet and talk about us eating sandwiches and just took a shower type of deal. I feel like
you're not tweeting on Threads, you're threading.
Well, I mean,
it's the same thing.
Not wrong.
Got to get the terminology down. I don't think Mark would support that.
Mark, if you're watching, hear the spear. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you're watching. Throw us a milli though. But yeah, let's get started. As always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, smack that like button. We've been having a lot of new viewers, a lot of new commenters in the chats as we're heading into fall camp here, not too far away from it whatsoever. So enjoying all the new people coming in to hang out with us as we get prepared for a major gigantic season ahead for Mike Norvell and Florida State Seminoles in this 2023 season. Let's jump into some recruiting to start off this podcast this evening. It won't be a long one, but we're going to jump through a couple of names here that we need to keep an eye on with some potential commitments heading Florida State's favor. D-Lou, I want to start off with Ty Hilton, offensive tackle. Maybe a name that not many knew a while ago, but has kind of surfaced the last couple of weeks, honestly. But Ty Hilton, he's going to be making his commitment on Friday. D-Lou, what should we be watching here? This is a 270-pound lineman, 6'4", out of Florida. Not a crazy high ranking here, but we were talking about in the production meeting, if Alex Atkins likes him, you've got to respect that decision there as he's pursuing him. But what should we expect out of Hilton, and maybe a decision on this Friday?
First off, let's set the stage here because Florida State obviously has had a really good start to the month of July, landing 4 verbal commitments over the first couple of days of the month. And now we're entering this upcoming weekend with, like you said, Ty Hilton committing on Friday and then multiple other targets announcing their decisions on Saturday. So, I mean, this looks like it could be another productive weekend for Florida State on the recruiting trail. Right now sitting, I believe, number 15 nationally as far as recruiting class, according to 247 Sports. I believe if they're able to land a couple guys this weekend, they may be getting there on the cusp of the top 10 in the country as far as recruiting rankings. And, you're slowly getting towards that announcement from a 5-star cornerback, Charles Lester, at the end of the month, which could cap off a really good run here for Florida State over the next couple weeks. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes and how everything ends up. But, yeah, like you said with Ty Hilton, Florida State got the last visit here, had him on campus that final weekend of June for his official visit alongside 4-star offensive lineman Jonathan Daniels. Obviously, that weekend was pretty jam-packed for Florida State as far as official visitors. But as you said, Logan, I mean, we've really seen him continue to grow in priority for the Seminoles, especially as of late. You think back to June, you had Jason Zandamela and Manassi Atiti both commit to USC, 2 big targets for Florida State on that offensive line board. I think with them kind of pledging to the Trojans over the summer, that kind of opened things up a little bit more for Ty Hilton and Florida State. And, the Seminoles don't have an offensive lineman commitment yet in this 2024 class. They're trying to lock that down. I do believe Hilton is going to be the first one to join the fold for FSU, committing over Florida and Miami. So, I mean, this is a really big win for FSU if they close this one out over some in-state rivals. That's always some nice bragging rights for Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins. And like you said, I mean, not the highest recruiting ranking right now, but when it comes to scouting offensive linemen for these recruiting services, I really feel like offensive line recruiting and to an extent defensive line recruiting, some of it is just a total crapshoot. You can't really project how some of these guys are going to fill out over the next couple of years. If Alex Atkins likes an offensive lineman, I like an offensive lineman. We saw Florida State take someone kind of like this in Chris Otto towards the end of that 2023 recruiting cycle, someone who was lower down in the recruiting rankings per se, but someone that Florida State projects to be a player over the next couple of years. I think they see something similar with Hilton, and he's also a guy with a lot of versatility. He can really end up fitting in on any 3 positions on that offensive line, tackle, guard, or center. It's just going to kind of depend once he gets to FSU if he does make that decision.
Seems that's something that Coach Atkins likes, covering him now for a couple of years, a guy that can work multiple positions or at least can be developed in that nature. You can look at Florida State's offensive line now, and there's a few of those players that Florida State has in their stable on that offensive line under Atkins. So this would make sense. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. We don't have a time yet, correct, for Friday for
Not
Hilton?
yet.
Okay. Gotcha. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. Make sure you guys are also following us at Nole Recruiting, and also, of course, at NoleGameday. We're keeping you guys fully up to date, on time, right when it happens. Commitments, those posts go out immediately. So Dustin does a great job there, making sure you guys are informed when that's happening. Sometimes we'll have live, how to watch type of commitment pieces going out for you guys as well. So make sure you guys are following us there on Twitter. Let's go into another name here, because this could be a really, really busy Saturday for Florida State. As we talked about last week, this is going to be a busy July for the Seminoles before fall camp begins. But this one is one player that we talked about the last couple of weeks heavily, definitely after visiting. This is 4-star running back Makai Danzy. This kid's nice. This is a running back that Florida State has brought in multiple times. Florida State already has a 2024 running back commit, really highly talented. Now, I guess you could say underrated with what the rankings are doing to Cam Davis. It's absolutely ridiculous what they're doing to him, but they already got him. Coach Yak's already got him in the fold, but they're going after Danzy here, and he's going to make his commitment on Saturday. We don't have a time yet for this, but a really talented running back that Florida State, Mike Norvell, wants to add to their stable. Brings a little bit of a different element than Cam Davis. How are we feeling? I think we're feeling pro FSU here. Dustin, you give us the scoop.
This is another recruitment where you've got to feel really good about Florida State's chances. Danzy has consistently kept the Seminoles as his leader throughout his recruitment, since the calendar turned to 2023. Obviously, him being a local prospect right down the road, he's been a familiar face on Florida State's campus, made that short drive over to campus twice during June, and Florida State was the only official visit he took during the month of June, which is a very important recruiting month when it comes to prospects taking official visits to their suitors, especially guys that are going to commit in the summer. So I think with Danzy's local ties, the fact that Florida State has made him such a priority for so long, I mean, he's consistently been the number 2 running back that they've been pursuing behind Cam Davis. I think, if we think about it throughout the last couple of months, I mean, Christian Clark was on the board for a little bit, but it always felt like he was more of an outlier. I think Jordan Lyle was someone that was talked about really early on for FSU, but Makai Danzy has always been a name that they've been on since they offered him over a year ago. So I think that, like I said, him being so close to home and FSU getting that only official visit in June, you've got to feel really good about the Seminoles' chances going into Saturday to add another blue chip running back to this class. And I mean, man, the duo of Cam Davis and Makai Danzy, it really feels like those two guys complement each other coming into this 2024 class and beginning their careers at Florida State, kind of bringing that 1-2 punch that we're seeing right now at FSU from Trey Benson and Lawrence Toafili.
That's exactly what I was going to say, D-Lou, is that it feels a little bit of a combination of Benson and Lawrence Toafili, just the different kind of attributes those guys bring to one another. 6'1", 175. Multiple offers from across the country. But I think it's pretty unique, what Coach Yak's able to tell him, saying, this is what Florida State does. They're able to run multiple running backs, and you see that in games alone. But throughout a couple of years, you're going to be playing whoever's best that day. And sometimes it was Trayshawn Ward last year. It'd be Trey Benson. Lawrence Toafili would have a game or two as well, and there's a KFC ad that just popped up here. Thank you, 247 Sports, for that. But yeah, Danzy is a nice, I would say, really athletic running back that Florida State would love to add onto that offense and add to Cam Davis, which you already know what you're getting out of Davis. Is just kind of like icing on the cake, and able to add some really solid depth with talent that's already kind of ahead and developed a little bit.
Definitely. And I mean, if you're thinking about once they get to Florida State, Cam Davis is going to fill that traditional running back role, whereas Danzy projects to be more of the tailback type, where he can contribute in the backfield, also get out, catch some passes, maybe get in the slot a little bit, depending on how things go. We've talked about, you mentioned his athleticism. We've talked about his speed a ton. I mean, if Florida State can land this commitment, this is an elite speedster coming to Tallahassee, someone who is the second fastest runner in the world in his age group in the 200-meter dash, and someone that is also going to be a dual sport athlete at the next level. Florida State's track program has also been recruiting him along with the football program. So if he does choose the Seminoles, he's going to have the chance to do both right here close to home.
Let's jump into another name, D-Lou, and we're going to go on the defensive side for this one. It's going to be a defensive back. I know I'm kind of going over Jonathan Daniels, but I want to save that one for the end. 3-star defensive back Kevin Levy. He's going to be committing on Saturday as well. What's the insight on this guy, Coach Surtain, being in his first year as a defensive backs coach? We're kind of getting a certain feel for what he likes there on his side of the ball. How are you feeling on this one? Are you still feeling like this could go in Florida State's favor?
Yeah, Levy just announced his commitment date yesterday. Florida State was one of 4 programs that was able to get him on campus during the month of June. I believe it was the second to last weekend of the month. He was also at Illinois, Rutgers, and Louisville during the month of June. So those are some of the other programs vying for his commitment at the moment. And for me, this is just one where Florida State, they kind of already have an aspect running in their favor, in that they have 4-star cornerback Ricky Knight committed in this 2024 class. Levy and Knight are cousins, and throughout this year, when both of them have come to campus, it's pretty much been coming at the same time with both of their families being there. So I think they've grown really comfortable about the aspect of playing together at the college level. It's not necessarily something that they've come out and said is 100% going to happen. But I do think, as Kevin's going through this process and thinking about where he wants to play his college ball, it's got to help that, not only is Florida State recruiting him to come there, but he's already got a family member there, and that'll help him maybe be a little more comfortable out of the gate. But I mean, he's one like Danzy, who is an elite athlete for his position, going to be bringing a lot of speed in if he does choose Florida State, and probably going to be playing outside cornerback or a nickel during his college career. But someone that I would say Florida State has grown to love during this recruiting cycle. Obviously, there are still some other really high priority cornerbacks on the board, and if FSU lands this one, they'll have 2 in the boat, and Levy and Knight, and also with that decision coming up for Charles Lesser at the end of the month, that could be 3 guys in the boat. But I do think, right now, as things stand, Florida State would take Levy.
Okay. Yeah, one that, add a little bit of athleticism with some depth there. There's some bigger names, Ricky Knight already being in the fold, but also Lester, man, which will be at the end of the month could be the end of some fireworks for July for the Seminoles, and Adam Fuller on the defensive side. But one that we'll be keeping an eye on for Saturday for Florida State, see if they're going to add on another commitment. This could be, depending on Daniels, which we'll talk about here in a second, this could be a really busy day on the recruiting side for the Seminoles. Let's talk about 4-star offensive tackle Jonathan Daniels, a guy that's a local guy. We've talked about him multiple times on here the last couple of episodes. Seems like Florida State has built a really good relationship very early on with him. Coach Atkins, him being close, him being able to travel quite a bit over to Tallahassee, works in the Seminoles' favor here. But he's going to be making his decision on Saturday. Really nice size too. I'll bring his measurements up here in a second. But tell us a little bit about Jonathan Daniels, and in the end, where you think maybe he's going to be ending up picking his college decision.
Yeah, if I'm remembering it correctly, Daniels was actually at Florida State the very first recruiting weekend of the year, whenever they came out of the winter dead period. So I mean, that first week or second week of January, he was out there at Florida State for an unofficial visit. And I mean, he's come back to campus multiple times. There have been some visits that have been, canceled due to traveling issues, but he's someone that's been back and built a really good relationship with Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell. And I really think it's going to pay off in Florida State's favor that they were able to get the final official visit in the month of June. We talked about it last week. Daniels narrowed his recruitment down now to FSU, Georgia, and Kentucky. And I believe since this podcast, Georgia has actually added 2 more verbal offensive lineman commitments. So at least in my opinion, it seems like the Bulldogs are full up front, and I feel pretty confident in Florida State's ability to win out over Kentucky on the recruiting trail for this commitment as things stand right now on a Wednesday evening. And I said last week, we're going to have to bump the over-under up to 7.5 commitments for Florida State in July. I mean, if they're able to pull off these 4 this weekend, that would already get you there, and you're still, eyeing Leicester as a potential 9th in the month. So, yeah, I still feel really confident about where Florida State stands with this one. Like I said, the coaching staff has been doing a really good number here on Jonathan Daniels. And then you've also got the current commitments, mentioned Luke Kromenhoek before, spending a lot of time around Daniels during his official visit. They pulled up the campus together on one of the days of the trip. And I feel like that cohesion between Florida State's coaching staff and also some of these commitments is what's going to help pay off in the end here to kind of get Daniels to Tallahassee, which would obviously be a pretty big one. You see it right here, ranked number 104 overall on 247 Sports. I believe he's still a 5-star or right around that range on On3. So this is an offensive lineman that's pretty highly regarded across the country.
Yep. Just seems like a guy, kind of an Alex Atkins type of guy, and could work and develop him in second year. Could be someone that can produce and get on the field for the Seminoles. But yeah, look at the size, 6'3", 280. what Coach Atkins, Coach Storms can do with him as well would be very nice. He's a guy that can add in, and I think the ties there are going to help a ton. Adding in a little bit of suspense there, as he should. I would be doing the same way. The last couple of weeks, stirring the pot a little bit, because I think just early on it was swaying so heavily in Florida State's favor. He had to switch some things up, but that's completely fine. We would be doing the same thing on here. But yeah, that's one that we'll be keeping a really close eye on. So make sure you guys are following us there, and also following Dustin on Twitter, because we're trying to get a certain time on some of these commitments. So, and this is a big one for FSU. Another one too that we'll keep an eye on. This is 3-star defensive back Ashton Hampton. He's gonna be committing on Saturday as well. What's the latest with him? Maybe not swaying so heavily in Florida State's favor like these other guys, but still FSU being in the mix here in the end.
So this is one where FSU has definitely made Hampton a priority throughout his recruitment. But, I mean, you did see him take some official visits last month. Florida State wasn't one of those. He was at Clemson, Arkansas, and a couple of other, I believe Louisville, and a couple of other programs for official visits in June. Does have one set up to December, to FSU in December, an official visit, but is going to go ahead and make it a summer announcement. And, as you can see here, Clemson, the publicly perceived favorite right now in his recruitment. It seems like he's probably going to commit to the Tigers on Saturday. They did enough to sell him during that official visit. But this is someone right here from the, local to the area. I don't think he's actually from Tallahassee, because, his father is Alonzo Hampton, who coached at Florida State previously, now is the head coach at Arkansas Pine Bluff. So, but anyway, someone that right now is a local product to the Tallahassee area, teammate of Makai Danzy over there at Florida State University School, Florida High, the state championship runner-ups from a season ago. And, he knows what Florida State's all about from his dad's experiences there. Has also been to Florida State as a recruit now, a handful of times throughout the year. But he hasn't been back on campus since April. And I think that's something that's kind of going to doom Florida State here in this recruitment. But if he decides to take that official visit still in December and Florida State's got a spot at that time, we'll see what happens. I mean, Hampton could be a possible flip candidate.
Yep, we shall see. We'll just see down the road. FSU's got the room. They've got the room. But, yeah, it seems like it's heading in the Tigers' favor and Dabo Sweeney.
I mean, you look at it now, you've got CJ Hurd committed at the safety spot. We'll see if that's where he ends up playing in his college career, or if maybe he transitions to more of a linebacker role. And then, you landed Red Morgan earlier this month. So you've got 2 safeties committed. I think Florida State, maybe going big game hunting right now. Obviously, KJ Bolden still out there uncommitted, planning to make a decision in August. Florida State, feels like they've got a pretty good shot there. So we'll see how things kind of unfold over the next couple of months.
And question here from William on Facebook. We talked about this earlier, but Danzy and Daniels were waiting on the time and for the commitment there. We're trying to communicate on their side and get a time for those. So once we get a time, make sure you guys are in our Discord too, because if you love recruiting or keeping up with it, our Discord, which is free to join, it's heavy recruiting talk. I think that's our busiest channel on the Discord itself. The link to the Discord is at the bottom or somewhere in the description on our YouTube. So make sure you jump over there. I know you're on Facebook, William. So jump over to YouTube. The link to join the Discord's there. So you get fully updated on time when these commitments are supposed to be held. One last recruiting thing, and this one's going to be on a recruiting part. Luke Kromenhoek, continues to make impressive strides, and he's only going into his second year, D-Lou, as a varsity quarterback, which is really impressive. And just the way that he's been performing some of these camps, along with obviously the Elite 11, really turning some heads, turning some eyes, and being like, oh yeah, that's 2024 quarterback commit who's only played 1 season on varsity is pretty good. And shocked a few people there. Some of the analysts there were talking heavily about him, and it showed. He continues to rise in these rankings. We put out a piece earlier this week, but at least specifically to 247 Sports, he's now a top 3 quarterback in the 2024 class. Overall, a number 33 recruit in the country for 2024. and a number 7 prospect in Georgia. But Luke continuously making strides. We had him on our podcast a little while ago, along with wide receiver commit Camden Fryer. Those two really close and continue to work with one another. But yeah, Luke making some strides, man, moving up there in the rankings. I don't think this should really shock anybody, as it just really goes to show too, got to give props to Tokars and Mike Norvell. Their evals excellent on Luke.
His ascension has been pretty crazy to watch. You're coming up on 2 years now, I believe, since Florida State offered Luke Kromenhoek after he participated at a summer camp. And at the time, he was an unranked prospect in the 2024 class. Less than a year later, ended up making that commitment to Florida State when he was still, someone that was being slept on in the recruiting rankings, hadn't even started a high school game at that point when he made that verbal commitment to Florida State. So, yeah, I think this is a scouting job that Mike Norvell and Tony Tokars are probably going to put on their resume. This is a pretty good one. Going back to what you said, number 33 overall on 247 Sports, number 3 quarterback, and then even higher regarded on 3, where he's ranked number 27 overall and still sitting there at the number 3 quarterback, but is also the number 3 prospect in the state of Georgia, and compared to 247 having him as the number 7 prospect in the Peach States. I mean, just his rise over the last couple of years has been pretty crazy to watch. Completed 65% of his passes last year for over 2,500 yards with 24 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions, and rushed for nearly 500 yards on the ground and 7 more touchdowns, and led Benedictine Military School to their 2nd consecutive state championship and only 2 losses on the season. Now entering his senior season, you got to think that Kromenhoek is coming back to do even more during his final year there. So, I mean, we'll see how things go this fall, but he's primed for a pretty damn good senior campaign. And I mean, depending on how that shakes out, when you couple that with what he was able to do at the Elite 11, finishing as one of the top quarterbacks in that event, making the, quote unquote Elite 11 during that. And then also, I think a lot of sites had him as the 3rd or 4th best quarterback overall at the event. With what he's done there, what he was able to do last year, and what he's probably going to do this upcoming season. I mean, we're seeing it right now. He's already on the cusp of being upgraded to a 5-star prospect. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets that final star by December when he officially signs with Florida State.
It's crazy, man. Crazy. I'm really interested to see how he does this upcoming season. Really was getting some training this offseason as well, and just really building chemistry with his own team. But the experience that he's been able to learn this offseason and adding that into this upcoming year is going to be huge for him. And I'm just really interested to see that jump. And then whenever he gets to Tallahassee too, because it seems like he's able to listen well and get developed easily. And, that we had a discussion last week about the 2024 quarterback situation, what that's going to look like. Is he going to come in and make an impact on that at FSU? When you're talking a top 5, a top 3 quarterback, and we're not even into his senior year yet, where he continues to make these strides, it's going to create a really heavy discussion for us after this upcoming season, after 2023, about Luke and what kind of impact he might make on this team in 2024.
I don't think it's crazy to say that, he's not even close to reaching his potential yet. I don't think he's realized what he could become as a football player. And we're going to see this year, going into his 2nd year as a starter. But I think really once he gets to Florida State, they're going to help put him on that fast track to development. And we saw what they've done with Jordan Travis throughout his career, the way that he's continued to develop, continued to improve. And now he enters his final season at Florida State as a Heisman contender. I think, Luke Kromenhoek coming into FSU, if you compare him to Jordan Travis at their respective stages, I think he's a little bit ahead of where Jordan was. Maybe he's got a little bit more tools to work with. So I think he's going to be someone that Florida State's coaching staff is going to be really excited about over the next couple of years. And he's also got that competitive mentality that FSU is looking for.
110%. Absolutely. And has turned into a great bell cow, great recruiting guy for this class, alongside with Cam Davis, shutting down the recruitment. All right, so that ends off recruiting there. Definitely a busy weekend, so make sure you guys are staying tuned to our socials as we'll be covering those commitments, and hopefully we'll get some time soon. And make sure in the Discord to stay fully updated. Let's jump into a few little quick hitters before we go into some basketball at the end. We're going to talk some 2024 NFL draft, as Florida State is going to have a heavy presence in this upcoming draft. It feels good, man. This is how it used to be back in the day. Loved watching the draft, loved seeing where Florida State players were going to end up going. I always wanted some FSU players to make it to Pittsburgh, my favorite team with the Steelers. I luckily had a guy named Vince Williams who held it down for me. Also, Lawrence Timmons. Shout out to my guy LT. But now this year, I have a heavy chance of getting a Seminole on my squad, and looking forward to doing this. And one of those players, I hope I won't have a chance of getting him because it's going to be early. But Jared Verse is blowing up a lot in these drafts, mock drafts, projections, ranking and at the position group. But Jared Verse, we put out a piece earlier this week about one of them. There's actually two. One of them where he's projected number 1 overall, Cam Miller, who keeps up to date with Florida State quite a bit, who I believe, and I hope I don't get this wrong, he might be listening to this, but he's with Pro Football Network. I believe he covered Florida State in his past time, but now with PFN, but keeps a close eye on Florida State and watches a lot of Florida State games and knows a lot of his players. He actually picked Jared Verse to go number 1 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. And, okay, cool. You might think that's crazy. Number 1. Well, how about number 5, where an ESPN draft analyst, Jordan Reed, tagged Jared Verse as the number 5 selection to go to the Los Angeles Rams. It's not much of a shocker. We thought that Jared Verse could have been a first rounder after this last season just because of how raw, the ability, the guy doesn't finish. This guy just continues to execute on the field, brings the energy. And we know who Jared Verse is, but for him to come back, continue to get better. Also, if he's able to have a fully healthy season too, he didn't have a fully healthy season last year. D-Lou, you and I were watching him at practice. That injury really hindered him in a lot of ways. And you saw it in games too, where he had to wear the brace and just didn't seem like he was 100% after what we saw against that LSU team, getting hurt on the road against Louisville. Imagine a fully healthy Jared Verse for 12 plus games this upcoming year. Could you imagine what that would do to his draft stock? It could be ridiculous, the stat sheet that we could see, but yeah. Number 1 overall, number 5, it just definitely seems like no matter what, if things go well for him as expected, he's a number 10 overall pick at the max.
I think top 10 is probably the expectation at this point. And that's what Jared Verse had to be thinking whenever he came back to Florida State to put a second year of film on tape. Like you said, last year wasn't fully healthy for a majority of the campaign, yet still finished with 17 tackles for loss and 9 sacks. Was one of the most dominant defensive ends in the entire country. And that was with him limited. And, we heard Jared Verse talk about how he wasn't 100% throughout the season. We heard Coach JP talk about it before the spring, how he was pretty much limited during practices throughout the weeks before leading up to games. He wasn't able to get practice reps, and I think that kind of hurt him a little bit. And also not being fully healthy obviously wasn't the best thing. But now he's gotten an even better shape than he was in last year. He's bulked up a little bit, which I don't know how he's doing it. Jared Verse is a man on a mission, and we saw it throughout the spring. It looked like child's play out there. He made it look easy the majority of the time it was out there. And whenever someone did win a rep against Jared Verse, it was something notable in our practice observations. We were doing a paragraph on that. That's just kind of where Jared Verse is at this point. And also with the other upgrades that Florida State's made across the defensive line, obviously Patrick Payton is going to be opposite of him. Gilbert Edmond coming in from South Carolina is going to be involved in that rotation somewhere. And then you look at the interior with Braden Fisk and Darrell Jackson, obviously Fabian Lovett. I think having all of this talent up front is only going to help Jared Verse because opposing teams are going to have to figure out who to double team. And I think that's going to leave Jared Verse one-on-one at some points or matched up maybe with an offensive tackle and a tight end. And that's just not going to be enough to block him against some of the opponents Florida State has on their schedule. So, we'll see how it works out, but he's certainly in line, barring an injury, for an extremely dominant season.
I'm really curious to see if his age comes back to bite him, kind of like what we saw with Jermaine Johnson in last year's draft, where some teams were a little concerned that he was already 22 by the time he entered the draft. Jared Verse is 22 right now. He'll be, 23 in 6 months by the time we get to the draft next year. So I wonder if that's something teams are going to consider. And, hopefully not, because as Dustin just described, he's as talented as a pass rusher as there is in college football right now. But that's what teams look at is by the time he gets to that second contract, he's going to be 27, 28 already, where some of these other pass rushers that have all the potential will be, just breaking into their 24, 25 age seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll definitely have to see. I mean, just what some of these NFL teams are going to be able to do with him, and because he's still raw in a lot of ways. JP talks about it a lot. A lot of things that he's still got to work on and get better at, and that's what I think the scariest part is. I think there's just a coach out there licking his chops and will say, "Hey, I'll do anything to grab him," type of deal. And one thing too, this guy just finishes plays. And that's a consistent basis. If you're looking at some of the mock drafts, some of these analysts talking about him, he just continues to not miss a play and go after whoever it is, quarterback, running back, and he shows up for the big games too. And we saw that definitely against LSU. Will Campbell, this is going to be another matchup for him come the season opener against the Tigers, which I'm really excited for. But it just went to show, coming against a 5-star offensive tackle, raw player that he was going against, he absolutely dominated. He bullied him. It was fun watching that up there in the press box because that's something that I was noting on in our preview of that game, just seeing how that competitive advantage that Jared Verse was going to have, and he sure did. And Will Campbell's no joke. Will Campbell will be a better product on this during the season opener than he was against FSU this last year. He's going to be better, and I'm interested to see how Verse is going to combat that and what Coach JP is going to work around, different schemes. But I think that's a good point, Dustin, with what's going to go on in the inside too, how that will impact Verse's play with the additions of, we'll see if Darrell Jackson's able to get that waiver, but Braden Fisk, and then you're looking at Farmer as well. And then, Lovett too, who also wasn't fully healthy throughout last season too. So a lot of things that could impact Jared Verse's play this upcoming season. Just with some simple developments from him, we could see a guy explode 12 plus sacks. I wouldn't be shocked you get to a 15 sack season, and that's an FSU grade kind of standard there for the Seminoles, just like how Jermaine Johnson performed during his 1 year in Tallahassee.
And I think last year, a lot of his success came off of his hustle and his athleticism and his physicality, whereas now we're seeing him improve fundamentally, his hands, his stance, his balance. That's only going to help him continue to improve.
Another one that continues to get a lot of recognition, and that's Florida State starting running back Trey Benson, former Oregon transfer, is now being projected. I love this. I wish we could go back to whenever Trey Benson was being brought into Tallahassee. He was just visiting. Let's just say he was just visiting, and FSU fans were absolutely freaking out on Twitter. Just fast forward a year later, he's now projected as the number 1 running back prospect in the 2024 NFL draft, getting a lot of respect there from PFF. It's just crazy to see, but which is still a really nice running back class, too, at least in your top 3 guys. I think there's 5 really good running backs in this upcoming class that a lot of NFL teams are going to like, but Trey Benson getting some respect here, being the number 1 in there. I'm going to try to bring this article up, but I just think it's a hilarious storyline. And I think Trey Benson is still feeding off of that a little bit, which I like. After being doubted coming into Tallahassee, he should, have that chip on your shoulder still going into this season and show the country what you can bring. And we really didn't see that till kind of once he found his groove, week 3, week 4, kind of getting that rust off, took a couple hits there, was going more, to the sidelines than anything, but ended up finding North. And man, he's just not the easiest. He's by far not the easiest running back right now in the country to tackle.
And he's going to be even better this upcoming season for Florida State, because like you said, he came into FSU coming off that knee injury at Oregon, didn't produce a lot for the Ducks during his time there. And whenever he did transfer to Florida State, a lot of fans were questioning the take at the time, but he was able to go through spring practice with FSU a little bit on more of a limited occasion. And we saw Florida State really kind of open things up during fall camp, and he started to make some plays. But, Trey Benson, he was still getting back to himself after that injury. And especially, whenever he ended up asserting himself during that 2023 season and, taking over whenever Trayshawn Ward went down with that injury and ultimately, taking the starting job for the remainder of the season. I think he was still getting comfortable a season ago. Now he had a fully healthy offseason, was able to go through the tour of duty, was able to go through spring practice and not be limited. Did have the green no contact jersey on, but that was just because Florida State was trying to, really protect him and give some of the other running backs reps. So, he's had a full offseason to continue to improve on himself, and also a further year away from the devastating injury that he suffered at Oregon. And I think you've got to feel really comfortable with what he's going to provide Florida State out of the gate.
He's an athletic freak. You think about, 6 foot 210 and has legit track speed. That's not common out of running backs. You compare his measurables to Adrian Peterson, who came in at 6'1", 215 when he entered the NFL. It's very similar, honestly. And if he keeps showing confidence in that knee and keeps running north-south like he did the second half of last season, there's no reason he can't be the first running back off the board, even with a draft class that has Blake Corum and Will Shipley and Raheem Sanders at Arkansas. There's a lot of great running backs, as there always is, but he absolutely has the potential just because of his size and his athleticism and the measurables to be that first running back.
And I have no doubt that he's going to have an extremely productive year for Florida State. Barring an injury, definitely going to hit that 1,000-yard mark that he came up 10 yards short of a season ago. The only real thing that I could see holding him back from being maybe the number one, but at least a top 3, top 5 running back in his class is that injury. Obviously going to have some testing done whenever he gets to the combine next year, and depending on how that checks out, you could see Trey Benson continue to move up draft boards or maybe fall down a little bit. But I think with what he showed last year and with where he's at now, he's definitely fully recovered 100% back from that injury, which looked like it could have ended his college career at the time. And I think that's a testament to the work that Trey Benson has continued to put in on and off the field. And you're just seeing that pay off for him. And another example of Florida State scouting, to go and get a guy who had 100 career yards or not even when Florida State got him. And you think the same thing for Johnny Wilson in the transfer portal last season, going and grabbing 2 guys that, didn't do a ton at their respective first stops, but Florida State evaluated them, projected what they could be. And look at what they did in Tallahassee last year.
I think he could also be a little bit of a better receiver out of the backfield. You see them use Toe Philly in those situations a lot, but the NFL's a passing league these days. They want their running backs to be able to catch the ball at the backfield. That's something he's going to have to improve on as well. But there's also special teams upside with him as a returner, which is something teams are going to look at.
Too, I want to add on too. I think an offensive line is going to play a big role for him as well, and bringing in what they've added also too with what they're bringing back. He's going to be in that system for a second season, and I think too Florida State really wasn't planning on building their offense, at least in their running game, around Trey Benson until later in the season. Now going into this season, they're going to build it around him, their playmaker. So too, you add on what Florida State was able to add on the wide receiver room and tight end room. It just, I think he's going to reach that 1,000-yard mark unless, you see another running back take some of those yards from him. But just looking at what we saw in spring camp, he's added on size. He told us during an interview a couple weeks ago that he's going to trim off a little bit just so he can keep that speed, but he looked gigantic at spring camp, which worried me a tiny bit. I was like, oh, did he add on too much? And then you see him bust it off to the side and he's beating out of the linebackers and the speed's still there. And that's what matters to me.
Yeah.
If you're able to still keep that, because you already know his physicality, getting off the tackles and throwing guys off of him.
Yeah, but the way he moves, and I think he was closer to more of like 215 last season, and said now he's at around 225 and trying to cut to 220. And he already had those statistics last year of breaking tackles.
Just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So looking forward to fall camp and seeing him perform after adding a little bit of size and trim it down. And I think, just off of what Mike Norvell is going to want to do with him, what he's been able to do in the past with his running backs, now having what he saw last year, having that for proof and being able to work off of that, I'm interested to see definitely with Coach Atkins too being in the fold as a co-offensive coordinator. It should be a fun year for the star running back who is now projected as a number one prospect per PFF, and Trey Sakema. Or Trevor Sakema. Let's jump into also another one. This one's going to be Jordan Travis, and this time this is also Trevor Sakema. Trevor liking a lot of Seminoles right here. It's pretty easy to tell, but per PFF and him, they've got him listed as the 6th best quarterback in the 2024 NFL draft. And this is also just a crazy storyline, fast forwarding, to what Jordan Travis was coming from Louisville. I think a lot of people forget that he was a transfer from Louisville, but it took multiple years for him to develop. This will also be an age one. I remember seeing Jordan Travis a couple of weeks ago. I think someone had tweeted, how long have you been in the college level or something? He had raised his hand to something, feeling like he was old as crap. So he is definitely an older player. So that's going to limit him a little bit in this class. And, this is a heavy stacked, talented quarterback class, but still being ranked number 6 and before going into his last season at Florida State, I think is just a really, really cool situation for him. But multiple quarterbacks ahead. I'm trying to get that list up right now.
I was going to ask, you happen to know? I mean, obviously, Caleb Williams is going to
be up
there.
Yeah, Drake,
I think Caleb and Drake is number 2. I'm trying to bring up the rest of this. I'm trying to bring up our article, but our article doesn't list the other quarterbacks in there. So
who wrote that?
Yeah, who? Am I count? Oh, that's Cade. Cade, he's a newbie. Cade's a newbie. I know the cat back here is stealing the show. She will not leave ever. She's sitting in the background here.
Well, try and figure that list out.
I'm finding it now.
I would say around 6. I mean, makes sense entering the preseason. Like you said, I think, some NFL teams will probably count his age against him moving into that pre-draft process where you're comparing him to some of these other guys who are, maybe 2 years younger or so, especially – I'm not sure. Caleb Williams, he's only going into his 3rd year. And then you've got Travis now entering his 6th year at the college level. So, I mean, there's a significant age gap there for sure. But I also think that with the trajectory that Jordan's on, there's an argument to be made that he hasn't reached his full potential yet. He's still getting better as a passer. And, I'm interested to see what aspects of his game he continues to take steps forward in this year. Because every year, I mean, we've seen a better version of Jordan Travis. Last year was the breakout version, and this year might be the Heisman version.
And there's going to be teams that look at the measurables and the size and go, oh, he's a little bit smaller and slighter than your prototypical NFL quarterback these days. It is what it is. There's some teams that still have that old school thinking when it comes to QBs.
All right, so I've got the list here, and this is number 3. So Caleb Williams, number 1. Drake May, number 2. Bo Nix from Oregon, number 3 here.
I just don't buy.
I don't buy it yet. I really don't. I'm sorry, but
I mean, measurables, that would be the only thing.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's just a physical trait quarterback. That's what he is.
Yeah. Michael Penix Jr. Still, I've got some question marks for him. Riley Leonard, young. We're going to see how his sophomore season goes.
He's measurables. He's got the measurables.
Yeah, listed at number 5, and then Jordan Travis at number 6. Quinn Ewers is behind him, though, from Texas, number 7. Jaden Daniels from LSU at number 8. KJ Jefferson from Arkansas. Talk about measurables there. He's at number 9, and number 10 is Michigan's JJ McCarthy. That top 5 is interesting me. The Bo Nix one.
The 1 and 2 are pretty much set in stone no matter where you look. Is 3 through 7 where just everybody's got something different. I've seen JJ McCarthy as high as 3 and as low as 12. It's like the quarterback ranges are all over the place right now for these guys in the 24 class.
Yeah, which is going to create I mean, depends too on how they perform this upcoming season too, but it's going to create for a fun mock draft on the computer for a lot of these guys, these analysts that are doing this for the quarterbacks this upcoming 2024 NFL draft, because there's just so many different prospects. Just depends on what you like and whatever system an offensive coordinator feels like is going to fit their team the best. But I'd really like to. We will do this as it goes on, but just trying to figure out what maybe team would like Jordan Travis. What would fit the offense the best would be a fun discussion to have.
For sure. I think Caleb Williams and Drake May, pretty set in stone. Both those guys are talented. Bo Nix, I want to see how he responds with Kenny Dillingham moving over to Arizona State, having to have a new offensive coordinator yet again in his career. And then Riley Leonard, we'll see if he continues to realize his potential. FSU fans will get a chance to see him up close and personal whenever Duke comes to town.
Which will probably be a pretty big game for the scouts too.
Yeah.
Yep, it will be. I want to mention one last thing here before we get into Chandler Jackson's suspension. Just going to hit a quick 180 here real quick. But Rodney Hudson is going to be inducted into the FSU Athletics Hall of Fame. I think some people might have forgotten that he was still playing. But absolute beast, as we know, offensive lineman. He's at 34 years of age. Played for the Seminoles. Now, if I get these years right, then I'm for a young buck here. Then I'm on one. But I believe would be back in 2007, I believe, is whenever he came in as a freshman.
Did you not look it up before you started talking about it?
I mean, you got it, but
I think so. Yeah,
you did get it. But yes,
I've got it. Yeah. I've got his NFL teams down, but yeah, came to Florida State 2007. Played for the Kansas City Chiefs. Played with the Oakland. I guess you could say Las Vegas Raiders, but Oakland Raiders, and then also the Arizona Cardinals for practically a season. But second team All-Pro, three-time Pro Bowler, first team All-American in 2009 at Florida State, 3 times first team All-ACC from 2008 to 2010, unanimous All-American 2010. So everything, man.
Jacobs blocking trophy.
Yeah. Absolute legend. Legend.
More than deserves it. One of the best offensive line products to ever come through Florida State. Arguably the best after Walter Jones.
The best center.
For sure. Yeah. You could definitely say he's the best interior offensive lineman to come through Florida State.
I've got Stork number 2.
Let's tell him. Let's bring Brian on. No, he would gladly agree. I think Brian would come on here.
Yeah, he'd be happily like number 2 behind Rodney. Yeah.
Hey, he played with Rodney for a season or two, so I mean, I'm sure he could attest just how good he was.
100%. Yeah. So congratulations to Rodney Hudson. It'd be great to get him now that this man is retired. It'd be great to get him on the podcast and interview him. That would be really fun. Definitely talk about some Coach Atkins and what Florida State's doing on the offensive line right now and the current status. But having him come on and talk about his career, definitely in the NFL, highly, highly touted and highly respected in the league at his position.
And outside of Hudson, 8 other prominent Florida State athletics figures get inducted into the Hall of Fame as well.
Shout out Coach Semro.
Yep. Coach Sue getting inducted as well. Absolute legend of what she did too for women's basketball in Tallahassee. Let's talk about some indefinite suspensions.
Don't say suspensions. It's one.
Okay.
For now.
For now.
Christ. Don't make it worse than it has to be.
Jeez, but yeah, Chandler Jackson, one of Florida State's best players this past season, I would say.
I wouldn't say.
I mean, I I could go even deeper.
Best young players. You got to put a
I would say
tag
that.
on it.
Like a promising player.
Yeah.
Promising player. Yeah. Promising player for Florida State. Suspended indefinitely. VZ, thoughts on this, on what's going down here? I don't know. I know we can't run into specifics on this suspension.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if anything officially gets announced about it. I'm not expecting it to be anything legally related. We'll see. It's just, especially with Hamilton, you don't really see him make these kind of loud announcements in early July. He usually likes to keep things close to the vest for as long as possible, and then just play it game by game. For it to happen in middle of summer when they're really just doing summer workouts, to me it's more of a warning shot than anything. Like, hey, you need to get some things aligned first before we can move forward. But hopefully Chandler Jackson get it figured out. He was, like we mentioned, the best young player on the team last year, and I think he's got a really, really bright future in this game. But maybe just has to get some things worked out.
Yeah, with the way this was publicized, it really felt like Leonard Hamilton yelling at Chandler Jackson to get back in line and figure it out before the season actually gets started. Especially, like you said, with this happening all the way in July, basketball still a couple months away from even being played. But Chandler Jackson, I mean, with the transitions that Florida State is going through and some of the guys they lost last year, he's expected to play a big role for Florida State this upcoming 23-24 season. Someone that has a ton of potential there at that point guard spot with exceptional size for the position and showed some real promise, like you said, last season. Still growing into his game, though, and I think he's going to be a heck of a defender as well. But as he continues to figure things out, it's going to be important for him to be committed to Florida State on the court, obviously, but also off the court. And like I said, I think this is Leonard Hamilton, the FSU coaching staff, sending a little bit of a message here.
I honestly can't recall a time when Hamilton suspended a player in the summer. I don't think it's ever happened.
And I mean, I'm sure that this kind of stuff has happened before, but it's normally not something that this program is going to publicize. Leonard Hamilton does a lot of his stuff behind closed doors. So for him to decide we're going to put out a public message that Chandler Jackson is indefinitely suspended, sounds like a warning shot.
Yeah, hopefully it gets figured out before the season. If this goes, a few weeks into the season, then it's something to be worried about. But for now, I'm kind of just taking what comes with it, honestly.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I had something like, no, I didn't get suspended. But, high school, got to have a little slap on the wrist a little bit, make sure we're focused, make sure we're getting our homeworks and studying for our tests done. Sometimes you got to have a little wake up. That's fine. That's how it goes.
Logan was indefinitely suspended from.
No, I was never indefinitely suspended. No,
I didn't know this one. That's new.
I did not get suspended. I just had like a little, hey, you ain't gonna be playing or doing nothing until you make sure.
Well, they told you that anyway.
I didn't play. I couldn't play. That was all right. Sophomore year, very good. Anyways, I learned my lesson.
They didn't let him play, guys.
Then I learned my lesson.
It's because he was suspended.
Yep. Actually, that's how I should use it. I didn't play much because I was indefinitely suspended. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap up the show. Busy recruiting weekend on Saturday. So if you guys are just joining us now, make sure you go to the beginning of this podcast. Got some commitments coming most likely in Florida State's favor. Before y'all jump off of here, we got over 100 on YouTube. If you guys would hit the like button before you guys leave, it would be greatly appreciated. Over 50 likes. So appreciate y'all hanging out with us this evening. We will have another episode next Wednesday at the same time at 7:00. We'll be recapping some of these commitments and where these recruits end up picking their future homes. So that will be fun. And then we're inching closer and closer and closer to fall camp. I'm at the point now where I'm just ready to get there, with us dropping out some fall camp previews and position group stuff and some in-depth things. I'm just like, hey, let's just go and get this thing going. So we're not too far away from it, guys. I know everybody's itching for it, but enjoy the last couple of weeks of summer. I know I am, but we'll be here next Wednesday. Nonetheless, appreciate y'all. As always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. Hit the subscribe button on those platforms so you get notified every time I release a new episode. Drop a like before you head out. And yeah, anything else, gentlemen, from your side? Anything? None? All right. Sounds good to me. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of y'all's week. Peace.